Happy holidays, everyone. Today we're going to be talking about migrating from legacy versions of the framework to the new .NET Framework 9. What I've got here is a console application, and I'm also going to add a class library here to that application. And this is not going to be a normal class library, but actually a legacy class library. Okay. And then in here, let's go ahead and let's add a static helper class. Basically, that's going to do something. And put that in there. And then, of course, we all know that from in here, we can do, let's do it. And to get this to work, we need to add a reference to the class library. So here's a legacy library. And then, of course, we need to add a using statement. And I can run this by simply hitting the console right line. And there you go. It says something is done. So I've got helper class, and I now want to create a new console application. And this is now .NET 9. So we've now created a new console application, and in its most basic form, and I say most basic form because there could be things inside of this legacy library that we actually don't want to use because they leverage old framework technology. But assuming that this class library, this legacy library that we have right now, which is running using .NET Framework 4.7, assuming that there's nothing special to it and it's as clean as possible, you can actually reference it in your new project, right? So I can actually go into my console application here, which is running .NET 9, as you can see, and I can actually add a project reference to my legacy library, and that will be added. And I can actually add the helper class in my new console. Let's build that. And if I run it, everything continues to work. But that is typically not the ideal way that we want to share code between the old and new framework. What we actually want to use is something called a shared project. Now, the fundamental difference between shared projects and regular class libraries is that the unit of reuse in a class library is an assembly. It's an assembly that you're passing back and forth. Whereas in a shared project, the unit of reuse is the actual code. Now, this comes into play when the reverse is required. So for example, if I wanted some .NET 9 code to be reused by my old legacy framework, or I wanted everything to run side by side, how would that work, right? So if I created a new .NET 9 library, so this would be a typical class library now. And I'm just going to copy the helper class in there and say we're going to use the helper class. Let's delete this. Okay, so this is my new .NET 9 library. Now, can this library be referenced by the legacy console? The answer is no, it cannot. And there you can see that it will not allow it to be referenced because it is basically 4.7 project, and I'm trying to reference a .NET 9 application. So the way to solve for that is to use a shared library. And before we do that, we're going to organize our code a little bit. So we're going to take our libraries and put them both in here so that we have them in one place. And then we'll have our two consoles. And then we're going to remove all the references to everything so that it's easy for us to see. So remove that. Okay. Then what we're going to do is we're going to add a new project type called a shared project. So I'm going to copy over my helper class here, and I'm actually going to remove it from here. And I'm also going to remove it from the legacy library, right? So that there's only one helper class here, which is this. I'll call it shared. And then I'm going to reference this shared project. And you'll notice that you will not find it inside of assemblies and projects. You actually have to go to shared projects to find it. So here's a shared project. Reference it from legacy. Go to shared projects. Reference it from the new. Right. So now we now both legacy and new, which we can now build. Both reference this shared library. So with all that done, we can now go back to a more natural way of referencing this library. What we want is we want the legacy console to reference all the legacy libraries, and we want the new console to reference the new library, but they are both underneath using the same code to compile and share. So you will end up with two assemblies, one for the .NET Framework and one for .NET 9, but the code within those two assemblies will be exactly the same. So in here, we will add a reference to our legacy library. And in here, we will add a reference to our new library. So let's build that. You can see that builds properly. And over here in legacy library, you can already see that that builds properly. So I can actually run the new console using the new library. Something is done shared. And I can also run the old console, debug, start new instance. Something is done shared, right? There are some capabilities in .NET 9 and the newer versions of .NET that don't exist in the old version. So one of them is, for example, this file scoped version of a namespace. As you can see, the moment I do this, it's not going to work. This error message we have here is actually coming from the legacy library, not from either the shared library or the new library. So even with this error message here, I can actually build the new library, and I can actually build the new console, and I can even actually run the new console application, and it'll continue to work. However, if I try to build the legacy, you're going to get that error that says feature file scope namespace is not available. This is because this is a feature that's available in .NET 9 or actually C#, C# 7.3, so later versions of .NET than the .NET 4.8 that the library is actually leveraging. So one thing to be mindful of is the kind of capabilities that you put in place when you actually use a shared library, because the shared library is going to be built, the code inside of it is going to be built using the framework that is referencing it. So there you have it. We've now shown you how to run side-by-side code using the old .NET framework, new .NET 9, leveraging shared projects, and even in some cases, simply referencing the old legacy projects inside of your new framework. Hope you enjoyed the videos. See you next time. And once again, happy holidays.